In 1519, Ferdinand Magellan set off on an expedition around the world. It took him way more than 80 days, and he actually never made it all the way around himself, dying partway through the trip. But the expedition itself was successful. Barely. By the time the 1760s rolled around, 12 more trips around the world had been completed, but none by the French. Sacre bleu! But that's okay, because when a French expedition set out in 1766, it would go down in history as the first circumnavigation of the globe made by a woman. Though the woman part wasn't exactly on purpose. Hello, and welcome to Remember, a podcast about history, mystery, and did you know that we call the Pacific Ocean because when Magellan first sailed into that body of water, it was so lovely, so calm, so tranquil, so he called it Mar Pacifico, the peaceful sea. It should have been called Mar Mas Frio, very cold ocean, because at least the part of it where I live is absolutely freezing cold. All of the time.
Oh no, I live in Los Angeles. It's cold, the water. Come to Britain.
The water is cold. I bet it's the same coldness as in Britain.
Do you remember when me and you were in Aberystwyth, Paula, and I made you paddle in February?
Yeah, that was cold. It'd be cold like that in the Pacific in February.
It wouldn't be cold like that. That was the coldness of death.
Well, proving my point here, you know someone who is used to very cold beach days? Who doesn't mind paddling his feet in icy waters, which is straight up the intro I wrote? Matthew, I go to the Welsh seaside Jude.
Hello, that's me. I'm darn proud of it, I tell you. It's not a trip to the beach unless you put your feet in the water. You can't even count it as having been there.
And get frostbite on your toes.
Yeah. Oh, you won't be long getting frostbite.
And I'm Paula, grew up swimming in the Gulf of Mexico, Deming, where it's so warm, so full of jellyfish.
You don't even know you're bored. Honestly, the fact that you swam in warm water as a child makes me angry.
I did get stung by jellyfish every time I went into that water, so, there's a balance to be had there.
I trod on a jellyfish in Harlech once.
It
was really not fun, and the walk to Harlech Beach is about a mile.
I'm telling you, every time. So, every summer, about 6 jellyfish stings.
They can't be that bad if you're willing to get more stings.
Well, I'm just supposed to never go back into the ocean again?
I tell you what, I wasn't going back in the ocean when I got stung. I was done for the day. I couldn't walk. I was about 5.
Let me set a scene for you. Jellyfish free. It's 1766 at a dock in France. Louis Antoine de Bougainville. I'm going to be saying a lot of French names in this, y'all, and just grant me a little grace, okay? Well, he is preparing to set sail around the globe to bring glory to France. He will explore the South Pacific, find and claim new lands for France, and make scientific discoveries. As part of that, he has brought on Phillibert Commerson, botanist and physician. Commerson is ready to make scientific advances in the study of plant life, but there's only one problem. He hasn't yet found an assistant or valet to help him on the voyage. The expedition is about to depart, Matthew. What will he do?
Here's my suggestion.
Okay.
Get a dog.
He could have gotten a dog. That actually would have been very cute.
Bring a dog up on board. You're never lonely when you've got a pig around.
But they might eat you if something happens to
you.
Yeah.
Although there was that thing where they were trying to get giant tortoises back to Britain for exposition and stuff to show all these giant tortoises, and not one ever made it back from the Galapagos because they could not stop eating them because they were so delicious.
Oh.
They just couldn't stop eating them.
Dude, chill. Keep your eye on the prize, you know?
The prize is that slow, delicious meal getting away that comes in its own dish.
Jeez. Well, Commerson did not need to find a dog to bring with him because in the most convenient timing ever, miraculous, one could say, a small-framed young man approaches and introduces himself as Jean Baret, botany assistant. He is available to join the voyage and be the valet for Commerson. So Commerson says, yes, of course. I mean, oui, Si claro. No, that went into Spanish. What wonderful timing, my boy. You're hired. And with no time at all to look into Baret's background and truly judge whether it was a good idea to bring him along, he joins the crew. But there's a twist. Any guesses what it might be, Matthew?
Does he start having strange feelings towards this young man?
In a very Shakespearean Twelfth Night kind of way. Jean Baret isn't Jean Baret at all, but Jeanne Baret.
Oui, bien sûr.
A woman. And even twistier, she didn't just randomly show up on the docks with the most convenient timing in the history of the world. She and Commerson planned it that way.
Une femme? Certainement pas.
Wait, what does that mean?
A woman? No way.
Okay, let's back up a little. Jeanne, and I think I'm saying the female version of her name, right?
Jean and Jeanne, yeah, maybe.
Jeanne was born in 1740 in a small rural French town. She was a peasant and very poor. Now, accounts differ on the details of her life and how exactly she met Commerson.
Dans une petite ville rurale française.
And you have just said?
In a small rural French town.
Oh my gosh, are you gonna be Google translating everything I say? Is that the bit?
I could know French.
Skunk. How do you say skunk in French?
Moufette is skunk.
Moufette.
Moufette. It's quite a nice word, actually.
Not to be confused with a muffaletta, which is a delicious sandwich you can get in New Orleans. Okay.
Made out of skunk meat.
Made out of skunk meat.
The most dangerous of all the meats. Don't eat the wrong part.
Accounts differ on the details of Jean Baret's life and how exactly she met Commerson. Some say that she learned about healing herbs and plants from her family and was seen as a village healer. And perhaps that interest in plants led her to meeting Phillibert Commerson, who was, of course, a botanist. However it happened, she started working as a servant in his household and then became his housekeeper.
Jolly good.
It's hard to know if she knew about plants before meeting Commerson or if he taught her about them. No one really knows, but she clearly had an interest and a knack for botanical work either way.
It's like me, I would say, Monsieur, je comprends of plants. I know that, for instance, that's La Fern. But that's about it.
It's like, well, I have much to teach you, young Padawan. It does seem like Commerson taught her how to read, and I just made a Star Wars reference just in case you didn't get it, Matthew.
What did you say?
I have much to teach you, young Padawan.
Ah. Also, it's je connais une plante, not je comprends. Yeah, anyway, whatever. My French is not good.
It's better than mine. I don't know anything other than oh oui oui. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi? You know?
So she's got the kyber crystal.
Right. She's got the metachlorians. And
how do I know what a kyber crystal is?
I don't know.
When did that happen?
I have no idea, honestly. Okay.
She's in the house. She's learning about plants.
She's in the house. She's learning about plants and probably also learning how to read and write from Commerson.
Yeah, but it's French.
It's French, though. It's not English, so, like, whatever. This would, of course, come in handy when documenting new plant discoveries.
She needs to learn some Latin, probably, as well, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Commerson was, like, 13 years older than Jeanne and a widower. Apparently, he was very depressed when his wife died.
What year is this?
Late 1750s, probably.
So she could have, have got cholera or smallpox or something like that, yellow fever. I'm wondering how the wife died.
Oh, I was like, who? Yeah, I mean, I don't think he murdered her or anything. She could have died in childbirth. There's any number of things. Because I think he did have a son who he doesn't spend, any time with. Anyway, this story's not really about him. But Phillibert Commerson and Jean Baret both liked each other. Liked each other. I like to think they fell in love over the dissection of a stem of a plant or something, or picking petals off of flowers, spreading them around in a room, talking about the scent of different blooms, you know.
Tu es plus douce qu'un n'importe quelle rose.
A rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
You are sweeter than any rose.
Oh.
But don't go into the west wing of the house.
What's in the West Wing?
Just memories.
Just memories.
It's just funny to me that you're thinking of Beauty and the Beast, and I'm thinking of Daphne du Maurier's book, Rebecca.
Oh, Rebecca, that's what it is. I said, yes. I also was singing Jane Eyre, but Rebecca is also one of those, 100%.
It just shows where our cultural touch points are, you know?
Yeah, so I did read Rebecca in school and enjoyed it, so... So here's a fun fact. Jeanne's promotion to housekeeper coincided with her getting pregnant and them moving to Paris, perhaps to avoid a scandal, because they were not married.
Big time no.
So this opportunity for Commerson to be the botanist on Bougainville's expedition comes up. And of course, he wants Jeanne with him, and she wants to go. Just as a side note, we're not going to get into much details about it, but they weren't married. She gave up the baby. As she left it somewhere, as I guess like a foundling. So we're not even thinking about like, how is the baby going to come on the trip? That's not even a thought here. Jeanne has been functioning as Commerson's assistant, and he doesn't want to do his work without her. But women aren't allowed on French naval vessels. And if you're a man caught, like the woman wouldn't necessarily get in trouble, but if you're a man caught bringing a woman on board, you get in big time trouble.
This sounds very sexist, but of course they weren't allowed on boats. It makes a lot of sense. It is frankly quite a large distraction for the entirety of the crew. Now, whoever's fault that is, you know what I mean? But it is the fact of the matter. They're men at sea.
I feel like if it was like 50-50, if you're like, hey, we've got like a pretty equal mix of men and women on this boat, then that feels like less of a thing. But if it's like there are 1 or 2 women on this boat full of men, then I feel like that's more of like, oh. But, I mean...
I don't know how much I'd want my wife on the boat with 100 men or 50 men. You know what I mean? You'd have to be... Frankly, it's a liability. She'd need to be protected.
Well, and there are other cultures, countries, societies that women and families do come on board with ship captains and things like that. But at this time, in the French Navy, because this was a government ship, this was a naval vessel, no women allowed on board.
But there are families on the USS Enterprise, which to this day makes no sense.
It's a science ship, but they get into a lot of battle. There's a lot of red alert for something that's supposed to be a science family ship.
Could you imagine taking your family? What was Keiko thinking?
Absolutely not. So, these two come up with a plan for Jeanne to become Jeanne, dressing in men's clothing and pretending like the two of them had just met. That way, if Baret was found out, Commerson wouldn't be in trouble for knowingly bringing a woman on board. And they were able to keep it a secret. Jeanne, now Jeanne. I feel like this name thing is very much like Clark Kent having glasses and Superman not, but...
They didn't take a lot of time to think about it, did they?
It's like have it be close enough that I'll know you're talking to me and I'll answer to it.
She has to respond to it naturally, right?
So Jeanne, now Jeanne, bound her chest and dressed in men's clothing, though probably not in the style of clothing shown in the picture of her most likely to come up if you Google her name. In that picture, she is in baggy sailor's clothes and a red Phrygian cap. Well, first things first, she wouldn't have dressed as a sailor. She wasn't a sailor. She was the valet of the ship's botanist. She probably would have been dressed more like a gentleman, the way a valet would look. Do you say valet or valet?
Valet.
In Downton Abbey, they say valet, and I always wondered, is that a British thing or?
I say valet, but I also never say the word valet.
Also, she would not have worn this red cap. That came about as a symbol of the French Revolution in the 1790s, still 25 years away from this voyage. So if you see this picture of her, just know that's not what she would have looked like. But dressing like a man isn't going to be enough to hide her identity, Matthew. She's on a ship for months, years even, with over 100 other men. And there's not a lot of privacy on a ship like this.
Main question, how's she going to the bathroom?
Yeah, I mean, that's the question everyone has. Like, sailors all sleep, like, in the same room with hammocks, and there's a not very private toilet, and you're expected...
Let's be honest. Most of these men are going to be hanging over...
Like, peeing off the side of the boat. Yeah.
Right, let's be honest.
Well, one thing that made hiding much easier was that the captain offered Commerson and his small-framed, definitely male valet the use of his own quarters for the voyage.
See, that's a problem, though, because that's going to sow rumor, and it's also going to make people not like Jean.
Well, apparently a lot of people did not like Commerson because he was a bit prickly. But this makes sense because the pair are gathering a lot of samples. They have a ton of equipment. Their whole point is to go out, gather plant samples, bring them back. They need to hang them to dry. They need to press them. They need to do all this stuff. There's like a smell associated with these plants. And everyone's like, what is happening? And so the captain's like, just use my quarters. You can use them. You can have all your stuff in there. That's where there will be room. And it's honestly incredibly gracious of the captain to give up his quarters, and very lucky for Commerson and Baret because it's the only place on the ship with a private bathroom.
Which I'm going to assume is a hole into the ocean.
Highly possible, yes.
I don't know how that actually would work. This is something I need to look into. This is a fascinating topic.
I actually have no idea how...
It can't just be a hole into the ocean because the ship would sink.
Yeah, I don't know how bathrooms worked on ships in the 1700s, actually.
In my mind, again, you just kind of hang off the side of the boat. Let's breeze past this. It's not really integral to the story.
So they have this private bathroom, which means Jean could do all the sorts of bathroomy things that Jeanne needed to do, and no one would be a witness to it. Baret... So I'm going back and forth. Jean, Jeanne, Baret, they're all the same people. Baret also did her job as valet. She wasn't just there to be Commerson's disguised girlfriend. Commerson is quoted as referring to Baret as his, quote, beast of burden. She traipsed through the wilderness with Commerson every day, carrying all the supplies and equipment they needed, all the notebooks for jotting down information. She was definitely exerting herself physically, and I think that lent some credence to her disguise.
She's highly capable, is what we're saying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which it kind of makes sense to me because she's like working class. She's a peasant. She would have been used to growing up like probably working in the field, or like no one was doing stuff for her growing up. Like she knows how to do like manual labor, even if what we and maybe the people at the time or the sailors on the ship, the kinds of things you wouldn't associate maybe necessarily with like a girl doing. She could do all of it.
And she's not on the ship to be a ship hand, you know,
no,
like
yeah,
a big burly
yeah.
man that's going to be hoisting the mainsail or anything like that. He is this small-framed, intelligent scientist who's on the ship. You know what I mean? So it's not like
yes,
there's an expectation for her to be taking part in the arm wrestling competitions or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, she's not there.
Or fighting some type of trained ape.
Exactly, as often happened on these boats. She's not there to be a sailor. She is there as an assistant to a scientist. I did find some accounts that the sailors had their doubts about Baret, though. Bougainville, the captain and leader of this voyage, wrote that there were rumors about a woman being on board one of the two ships that were part of this expedition, and that many suspected Baret, saying, quote, her build, her scruples at undressing in front of anyone at all, her beardless chin, and several other indications lent substance to the suspicion.
It doesn't take a genius to work it out.
And you're like, why? Everybody else just gets undressed all the time. That person never does. Huh, they never have a 5 o'clock shadow.
Exactly. It's not rocket science.
When confronted with this suspicion, some accounts, I don't know if this actually happened, but some accounts say that Baret claimed that she was a eunuch, having been captured and castrated by the Ottomans, which I guess is a thing that happened. So, like, all the dudes, of course, were so upset by the idea of losing their own junk that they thought, oh, yeah, of course, that's why you're weird and don't want to undress in front of us. Totally gets it, dude. Totally get it. And then they just left her alone.
That's a pretty good cover story, honestly.
Like, I'm a eunuch. If it happened early enough, you'd be like, I can't grow a beard. Probably. Because I bet that affects your whatever makes you grow a beard. I don't know.
Yeah, of course, it's going to affect your testosterone if you've got no testicles. So, yeah.
But eventually, the truth had to come out. If it didn't, we wouldn't know about it. So the voyage spent a good chunk of time in Tahiti, making friends with the locals, who were apparently very sexually open. And these sailors were all about it. There's a lot of journal entries from this voyage about how much sex they were all having with all the women and how like into it everybody was.
That's an ongoing thing with this type of ship exploration, where there are certain cultures who like the way they do like certain like a dance when they really want to open up the idea of trading with someone else, but it's seen as a provocative dance from a woman, selling shells or whatever.
Yeah, but this is also like there are journal accounts of like straight up like I don't want to use the word orgy, but like a lot of sex that everyone seems to be consensual, seems to be something that everybody's into. Like the women are like, "Oh, are you like our men?" And the dudes are like, "I would love to get it on with anybody. We, as far as we know, don't have any women on our ship."
This is one of the biggest problems of these type of voyages, though, because the transmission of disease is very high in these situations. Not only are you giving perhaps disease to a isolated community that hasn't had to suffer with that disease before, things like syphilis, but also you could contract disease from these people.
It's just stuff that you're not exposed to because you're from totally different environments.
I don't mean this in a bad way, but this is to the French meeting an alien race of people.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
And maybe the accounts are written with like rose-colored glasses on a little bit, but the accounts of this do seem as though Bougainville is really like really excited to be meeting new kinds of people and really like respectful of them and just wanting to know more about their culture, though there's drama that happens, but they don't
inevitably there always is. But this is like Cook. Cook described meeting the Aboriginal people as something along the lines of, truly this is the real nature of man. These people are, or was it Cook's, the other person on Cook's? But anyway, it's that saying that this is what men should be like because these people are happy.
Yeah.
And Cook was quite religious and he wasn't into like people going off the ship and doing whatever they want.
Yeah.
It was very, very frowned upon. He wouldn't have been doing that. Let's put it that way.
So there are conflicting accounts about exactly how this happened, but the story pretty much goes that Commerson and Baret were on one of their plant-finding excursions, and a group of Tahitians gathered around them, looked at Baret, and began saying the Tahitian word for woman. And maybe the Tahitians were just joking around like, "Hey, dude, you look kind of girly because you're small and have no beard, ha." Like, I don't think they had some magical ability to look at Jeanne and know she wasn't a man. But this freaked out both Commerson and Baret. And I guess they felt like threatened in this scenario and called out for help, got brought back to the ship where Bougainville demanded Baret reveal her true identity. He's like, "Look, there are already rumors about you. Now this happens. What's going on? We can either examine you and find out what's true, or you can just tell us." So she's like, "Okay, I'll tell you." As a side note, there's a recent biography about Jean Baret written by Glynis Ridley that says Jeanne was actually found out because all the sailors set upon her and assaulted her.
Mm-hmm.
There's no proof of this, and a lot of other people say that this probably didn't happen. That sort of behavior on a French naval ship would have had a harsh punishment, which is not recorded anywhere that anyone received that punishment. And Bougainville writes that Baret came through the voyage with her, quote, "virtue unharmed and sound." A lot of historians find Ridley's biography to be flawed and full of assumptions, but it is the account most prevalent on the internet, which is why I bring it up. So if you Google Jean Baret, you're probably going to find people parroting what Glynis Ridley has written in this book. So just take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of things that she states as fact, she doesn't actually have any proof backing them up. Those things could be true. There's a lot we don't know, because Jeanne herself did not keep a journal during this time. We don't have any records from her. But just keep that in mind as you're looking things up. Anyway, Jeanne admits to Bougainville that she is in fact a woman, but she tells her cover story. She's 26 and an orphan and very poor, and started disguising herself as a man in Paris and working as a valet as a way to support herself financially. She met Commerson right before the voyage and offered her services, and he had no idea she was not actually a man. And Commerson backed up this story. A woman? Say it again in French. Une femme? I don't know.
Une femme?
He had no idea. Je n'ai pas.
Je n'en avais aucune idée.
But of course, we know that he did know. So after 2 years of serving on the expedition and disguising herself as a man, Baret and Commerson get kicked off the boat. Not in a cruel way, they were taken to the French colony of Mauritius, which is an island off the coast of Madagascar. So they went from Tahiti to Madagascar. So they took them along a pretty fair way before they were like, we will drop you off here. And that's where they got left.
So the story must have fallen flat then. They're like, you got to get off the boat. Unless, do they want to get off at Madagascar?
No, I think they were like, look, you are a woman and you can't be on here. And we think Commerson knew. And people didn't really, a lot of people on the boat did not like Commerson. He was, like I said, he was a bit prickly. And I think the surgeon on the boat specifically didn't like him and spread a lot of like rumors and lies and things.
Imagine though, in the 1700s, being dropped off in Madagascar.
Well, there was a French colony, so they stuck them there, but yeah.
It's a frontier colony. I can't imagine it's got any luxury when they... Could you just take us back to Calais? Will that be okay, please?
They're not. They just need to just go back up around Africa and back up, and they'll get back to France, but...
I thought the French would be all right with a woman dressed like a man. When you think about it, it's Joan of Arc.
That's a good point. But I don't know that that's the part that bothered them. They're just, you can't have a woman on board.
She's the hero of Orleans.
You can't have a woman on board. It doesn't matter. She can't be there.
Rules is rules, Paula, as you know.
Rules are rules. It's the military. And of course, the man who brought her on board can't be there either. And so, they both stay in Mauritius for a number of years.
Les régales sont les régales.
A what?
Rules is rules.
Jeez. Commerson was in ill health and he died in this colony. I think he was only 45.
He probably got bit by something or eaten by something or trod on something that went bad.
I think he already, on the ship, he was having some issues. Issues with his legs and other ill health. And, you know, it was a different time, right? This is pre-American Revolution. So it's a different time. Baret married a French soldier that she met there and ran her own tavern and lived out what seems to be a pretty good life. She ended up making a good amount of money. She made her French soldier husband sign a prenup agreement that all the property was hers before they got married, so it wouldn't transfer over into his name.
Yeah.
It seems like she ended up doing pretty well for herself. In 1775, she finally returned to France, completing her circumnavigation of the globe. And, of course, being the first woman to do it.
Well, you say that.
What does that mean? This is what people say. Now, of course, we don't know. There could be any other number of women who we don't know were women on boats that went totally around the globe. But up to this point, this is only the 13th expedition to have ever done it.
I would argue that the first female to go around the world would have been perhaps the well-traveled goat.
The well-traveled goat.
Yeah, so there was this goat, which
Oh my
unfortunately does not have a name. But Samuel Wallis, who was on a ship called the Dolphin, had done this expedition, and they were like, he went up to James Cook, and they've been around the world, and he was like, went up to James Cook, Cook went on his expedition, he was like, dude, I got this goat for you. It's the best goat ever, and it never doesn't have milk. It always has milk. It's like this amazing milk-providing goat. So Cook took it on the endeavor. This goat went round the world twice.
Okay, I will rephrase. That being, of course, the first human woman to do it.
I'm just saying that. I think this goat is not represented enough in history, and I think it's pretty good.
I'd never heard of this goat before, so thank you for that random fact.
In fame scarce second to the nurse of Jove, this goat who twice the world has traversed round, deserving both her master's care and love, ease the perpetual pastures now has found.
Wow, this goat got a lot more respect than Jean Baret did.
Yeah.
That's depressing.
It was a great goat, though.
It was a great goat, though. Did Jean Baret provide anyone with milk? Nah.
No, she wasn't even willing to... I'm not going to have that. She wouldn't even whack them out.
I think the discovery that Jean Baret is best known for, though doesn't actually get credited for, is the bougainvillea. Growing up in the South, I know this plant well. It's a vine plant with the petals kind of look like leaves in a way. Comes in a variety of like what I would call tropical colors, like hot pink and purple and green.
Most plants come in green though, Paula.
But I mean
I know what you mean.
You skunk. Commerson gets the credit for discovering this plant. And I want to stop here really quick and say, like, can we really say that it was discovered? Don't we think that the people who lived near this plant in Rio de Janeiro probably already knew about it?
Well, yes, but the way that we conceptualize discoveries in the West is when we learnt about them. But unfortunately, of course, that is the dominant story of those things moving forward.
Right.
You know,
So discovered by the first French person to ever see the bougainvillea was Jeanne. And it's likely that she is the one who found it because Commerson often couldn't leave the ship to go exploring due to those previously mentioned health issues. So Jeanne would go out by herself. And she's probably the one who found this plant, which then, of course, was named not after her, but after the captain of the voyage Bougainville.
It's like those fossils that Mary Hanson found or whoever found them, that people are going to, you know, like I said in that episode, a coal miner finds a fossil and the rich guy who bought it is the one they name it after.
Exactly.
You know?
Jean Baret didn't get a lot of official recognition for her contributions to science and botany, though I believe she did end up getting a pension from the French government eventually due to her body of work from the voyage. So that's pretty good.
Well, that's very similar to the Mary Hanson story, in fact.
But she was respected by the people she traveled with. So I will end here with a quote from one of these people.
I'll read it for you.
Okay, I will send it to you.
A goat you are not, and will never be. That is because, turns out, you're a lady.
That's really good, and I wish it was the quote. She dared to confront very exhausting work, dangers, and all the incidents that one can expect on such an enterprise. She deserves a place among famous women.
Thank you, Paula, so much for doing the research for this episode. You do a lot of episodes at Women at Sea. I'm saying it.
Technically, I think it's only my second one, but yes. It's interesting.
And we have done 2 episodes on dinosaurs.
I am a sucker for a story of a woman who has to disguise herself as a man to do something. I love that as like a storytelling trope. So when I saw this, I was like, heck yeah, I'm doing an episode on her.
Well, thank you so much. It's a great story. And thank you, everyone, so much for listening to this podcast. If you want to help us out, then the best way you can do that is by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you do it. We've got this lofty goal of trying to get 500 5-star reviews across all platforms. Can you be someone to do with that and help? Maybe. It's a lot,
Maybe.
But we would really appreciate it. It's just one of the greatest ways to help grow a show. And, of course, another way to do that is to tell someone about the show who you think might enjoy the show. Are they interested in history? They're like 2 friends talking about history in a way that's like, you know, you're talking to your mate. That's kind of what we do. We'd really love it if you could help us that way. Until next time, everyone, have a great week. Thanks for listening. Bye.
And don't you forget it.